Welcome to Valley News Live at 4. I'm Bobby Fallat. We have new information about that large police presence that was seen this morning. According to police, there was a report of a stolen vehicle that crashed near the intersection of the 1500 block of 20th Avenue South. Now, the driver and two passengers ended up running away from the scene. Officers then used their canine Uno in their efforts and ended up arresting the three people in the 1900 block of 16th Street South. Now, stay with Valley News Live throughout the night as we are providing updates on exactly who these people were. Now, during the incident, schools such as Lewis and Clark Elementary kept their students from going outside for recess during the time of the active incident. They did end up resuming their day as normal once the okay was given from the police department.
I was a little bit surprised. Our neighborhood's usually a little quieter than this, but you never know what's going to happen.
And again, stay with the Valley News Live throughout the night as we are currently learning who the three people were in the vehicle and what charges they are facing.